Hello and welcome to EGW Writings Tech Tips. I'm your host, Darryl Thompson. Thank you for joining us today in another of our series on learning how to use the EGW Writings 2 app on your iPhone. Now today I'm going to talk to you about My Library, what it is, and why we have it in the app. Some of you are familiar with a couple of very popular apps, and that is like Apple Books and Kindle Books. Now, those readers have been created so that you can read through ebooks within your mobile device, or sometimes some of the apps like the Kindle can be read on a desktop computer as well, or an iPad. And Apple Books can be read on the iPad as well. Now, the concept behind Apple Books is this. It enables you to download a book into your library, and then when you open that book up, it will open up to the correct current location of the last place that you read in the book. So it's great at keeping track of reading a book through cover to cover. Now, some of you realized when we first brought out EGW Writings 2 that we had no ability to do that. The old EGW Writings 1 app always automatically just opened up to the last location of reading the book, but it only had a small collection of books available compared to the EGW Writings 2 app that has 139 languages, several hundred audiobooks, and also ebooks and in EPUB and PDF and Mobi. So it is full, absolutely full of content. And so we decided to have a bookshelf that displayed all of that material in different collections. So it was separated out into like books, periodicals, manuscripts, Adventist Pioneer Library, Bible, reference. A lot of material was available within that app. Now, it did not enable you, though, to be able to easily come back into the book that you were last reading. Now, of course, we had history, but history would be wiped out. Let's say if I was reading Patriarchs and Prophets and I opened up Patriarchs and Prophets to page 100, I read it, and then I closed the app. And then I later on picked it up and I did a search. And if I opened up a search result from Patriarchs and Prophets, it would wipe out my previous reading history and now make that location that I opened up in the search result the new history point in that book. So we decided to create a Kindle or Apple Book style of reader within the EGW Writings 2 app, and we called it My Library. Now, when you open up My Library for the first time, it will automatically open up to the last book that you read and the exact location that you were reading within that book. So I'm going to demonstrate to you a couple of the little techniques that I think you can use. Because if you want to read a book from cover to cover, use My Library. If you want to read and search and browse through the books, don't do that through My Library. Do that through All Collections. So that's the difference between All Collections and My Library. All Collections is for browsing. My Library is for reading. And you can always use the search at any time, and search and all that will be tracked in the history section of the app. My Library history will be tracked both in My Library history and in the history. But when you search and when you browse within All Collections, it's only kept in the history section. So we've had like two history states built within the app. Now that more might sound confusing, so I'm now going to demonstrate to you these points very quickly. In front of me, I have the app open, and you can see the top two collections are My Library and All Collections in the menu. When I open up My Library for the first time, it's going to say, okay, here is the English books, and it gives me a list of the English books. I open up the English book, and I'm going to say, okay, let's open up Christ Object Lessons. So I read Christ Object Lessons, I'm in chapter 1, and I'm browsing through the book and reading it. Now, I'll stop there at this highlighted point because it will be a good thing for our demonstration. If I come out and track out of the app and go back home, and now go down to say All Collections, and I track here in All Collections, and I come down here again to Christ Object Lessons within All Collections, and read again from here, and I'm now in chapter 3, let's say, and scrolling through. If I have been browsing within all collections and I jump back out, go back home and come into my library, okay, and then I go and open up my library at Christ Object Lessons, notice that I'm not down in chapter 3. It tracked exactly where I last left off within Christ Object Lessons in chapter 1. What I did in all collections did not interfere with my reading habits. So the same thing over here. If I come over here and browse, and I go to Christ Object Lessons and put in page 56, and I go to Christ Object Lessons in page 56, and I'm reading through here in Christ Object Lessons. If I jump back out and go back to my library, okay, and open up the Christ Object Lessons in my library, once again, it will return to the exact location that I was in my library. Searching and browsing in all collections has no interference within what I do in my library. And this is great because if I actually close out the app completely and come back, a day, a week, a month later, it doesn't matter, and I open up the app and then I tap on my library, it's going to open up directly to the last place that I read within that book. Now, if I browse back in the book and go to another book, it will keep track now in this book. And you can go through within my library and keep track of all the different books that you slowly want to read through within the My Library section. And something that's also good when you're reading here, it will tell you when you last read it. And if you've started reading it, it will actually put the page number that you're on. If all you see is the book code, that means you haven't started reading it. If you see a page number and a paragraph number showing up, you actually have started to read through this book. All right, I think I've tried to explain to you as best I can on how we use the EGW Writings 2 app, My Library, for reading a book from cover to cover, and we use the All Collections and Search for browsing and navigating through books for doing research or casual reading. If you're going to want to read a book from cover to cover, then use My Library. And we have the ability through My Library also to be able to read, if you're bilingual, store and multiple language locations within multiple books. Okay. Well, thank you for joining us in another sort of meaningful and maybe complicated, but hopefully as you use it and you'll actually understand the benefit of the My Library principles that we built within the app of being able to keep track of a book that you want to read from cover to cover. And then when you browse and search, that history not being interfered with. All right, well, thanks for joining us for another tech tip. Have a lovely day and enjoy reading the writings of Ellen G. White. Bye for now.